The Calthorian Empire had lived for so long that most people in the galaxy could not imagine a time before it. Its banners hung across hundreds of star systems. Its armies moved with perfect order, and its rulers believed they were unshakable. Every child in the empire grew up hearing stories about their greatness, how they built entire cities in the sky, how they shaped planets to their liking, how their fleets could crush any enemy within hours. But the truth behind the pride was simple. The empire ruled through fear. Many smaller civilizations did not admire the Calthorians. They simply obeyed because they were afraid of what would happen if they refused. The Calthorian people believed their control was absolute. Their scholars claimed that no unknown species large enough to challenge them still existed. Their explorers had mapped the regions beyond their borders. Their military watched every corner of imperial space. So when a lonely, silent ship appeared at the edge of their territory, nobody worried. In fact, most believed it was just some lost scout ship from a minor species. It was small, unmarked, and gave off almost no energy. It did not match any known design, but that only made the imperial officers more confident. After all, in their minds, any ship that simple could not be dangerous. The ship drifted quietly, as if it had no pilot. Imperial scanners studied it for hours but learned almost nothing. It did not answer messages. It did not change direction. It did not even show signs of life inside. And yet it looked too clean, too perfect to be abandoned. Its metal surface had no marks, no rust, and no signs of travel burns. It was as if the ship had appeared fully new at that exact moment. Even then, the Empire did not feel threatened. Commanders joked about who would claim the ship as a trophy after they towed it in. High-ranking officials argued over which scientific team would get to examine the strange design. A few officers suggested caution, but they were quickly ignored. The Empire was used to looking down on outsiders. The idea that something unknown could challenge them simply did not fit into their minds at the same time. Rumors spread among the lower-ranking soldiers. Some said the ship came from a region beyond the Empire's charts. Others whispered that they had never seen metal shine the way that ship's hull did. A few claimed the ship felt wrong, as if it did not belong to their universe at all. But whenever these stories reached higher officials, they laughed them away. They believed they understood everything worth understanding in the galaxy. 2, the Empire's own citizens. Life continued as usual. Markets were full. Streets were busy. Giant holoscreens continued praising the Empire's greatness. Most people had no idea that something strange had entered their space. If they had known, they would have trusted the Imperial fleet to handle it. After all, the fleet had never failed before, but far from the Empire's shining cities. In the deep cold of space, the unknown ship continued moving with slow and steady purpose. It did not wander, it did not hesitate. It followed a path so precise that it seemed impossible for something abandoned. Its quiet journey carried it closer and closer to the Empire's inner systems. Inside the Imperial Command Center, the atmosphere slowly changed. At first there was amusement, then mild annoyance, and then confusion. The ship had passed through several border checkpoints without stopping. It had slipped through detection nets as if they were not even there. Some systems did not even record it entering. It was only noticed after it had already crossed them. Engineers checked for malfunctions, but everything appeared normal. The only abnormal thing was the ship itself. Finally, the Empire's High Council decided to send a war cruiser to intercept it. They chose Commander Reth Solisar, a trusted officer with a reputation for quick action. He was confident, loyal, and completely certain that nothing outside the Empire could ever match their strength. When he saw the ship on his screen for the first time, he frowned. It was small, so small that calling it a threat felt embarrassing. He gave the simple order to board it, expecting the mission to be routine. But even as his troops prepared to dock, strange silence settled over his ship. Lights flickered for a second, not long enough to cause panic, but enough to make the crew exchange nervous glances. The unknown vessel remained still. It did not raise shields. It did not power weapons. It simply floated forward, graceful and calm. Commander Reth told himself that nothing was wrong, but deep inside, a tiny piece of doubt began to form, something he had never felt before while serving the Empire. The ship was too calm, too quiet, too confident. It behaved like something that did not need to defend itself because it knew nothing could touch it. The Empire believed in strength, not superstition, so Reth pressed on. His boarding team moved toward the vessel. No alarms sounded, no traps activated. The ship opened its entrance hatch on its own, as if inviting them inside. That moment caused a wave of unease through the crew. Ships did not open doors for strangers, not unless someone inside wanted them to enter. Inside, the ship's corridors were empty and bright, with no buttons, no controls, no screens, nothing familiar. The walls were smooth like polished stone and warm to the touch. Every few seconds a gentle hum echoed through the halls, almost like breathing. Some soldiers whispered that the ship was alive, though none dared say it loudly. As they moved deeper inside, the team found no crew and no sign of what powered the vessel. It was as if the ship existed without needing anyone to operate it. When the commander ordered his team to establish a connection to their systems, everything went wrong. The moment their tools touched the ship's surface, a burst of energy surged through the Imperial cruiser outside. Lights shut down. Engines stopped. weapons powered off. The entire warship fell into darkness within seconds, and yet the unknown ship itself remained untouched, still glowing softly like a silent observer. Inside the Empire's command centers, confusion turned into alarm. This was not a lost vessel. This was not a broken machine. This was something the Empire did not understand at all. And for the first time in centuries, the Empire felt a crack in its confidence. Far from everyone's knowledge, this small event, the arrival of a single silent ship, was the first sign of a future the Empire was completely unprepared for. A future in which their greatest strengths would mean nothing. A future in which their long rule would not end with a war, but with a quiet, an unstoppable force that had already entered their territory. And while the Empire struggled to understand what had happened, the mysterious ship remained still, patient, and strangely deliberate, like the beginning of a story the galaxy had not heard before, and one the Empire would never be able to forget. Commander Reth Solasar had faced many strange things in his years of service, but nothing unsettled him the way this silent human ship did. After the first burst of energy shut down his cruiser, he tried to act calm in front of his crew. He ordered backup power. He demanded system checks. He barked new instructions with the voice of a confident officer, but inside, he felt something he was not used to fear, small and creeping, like a cold hand on his spine. The Empire had enemies before, but none had ever disabled an Imperial cruiser without firing a single shot across the Empire. The mysterious shutdown echoed through command networks. Officers who had been laughing at the strange vessel only hours earlier were no longer amused. Reports flew across communication channels. The cruiser was drifting, systems were dead, and Commander Reth was unable to regain control. Despite this, no one could blame him. The ship had done something impossible, something even the most advanced civilizations the Empire had conquered could never achieve. Still, the Empire held to its pride. High officials told themselves it must have been a malfunction, a glitch, a chance accident, something that could be explained, something normal. They refused to accept the more frightening possibility, the one whispered by nervous officers, that the unknown vessel had done it intentionally, and with absolute ease. Meanwhile, Commander Reth and his crew waited inside the strange, glowing corridors of the foreign ship. The air inside felt oddly clean, almost pure. There were no sharp smells, no hum of machinery, no vibrations from engines. Everything about the ship felt wrong, not because it was broken, but because it seemed perfect. The walls looked like metal and yet felt soft, like warm stone. The floors responded lightly under their boots, as if adjusting to their weight. Even the silence was unnatural. It was not the quiet of emptiness, but the quiet of something alive and listening. When Reth tried to contact the Imperial fleet for instructions, he realized the worst part. His communicator was dead, just like the ship outside. All signals, all frequencies, all channels were silent. It was as if the unknown vessel had erased their connection to the rest of the Empire. Despite the fear, Reth pushed his team forward. They moved deeper into the curve-shaped corridors. There were no rooms, no storage areas, no doors, just a long path that spiraled inward like a maze designed for a purpose they could not guess. Every step they took echoed faintly, the only sound in the unnatural calm. Some soldiers whispered that maybe the ship was watching them. Others believed the ship itself was the living crew. No one knew what to think. Back in the Empire's Central Command headquarters, reactions began to shift from confusion to suspicion. When a ship disabled an Imperial cruiser and ignored all attempts at communication, the only logical conclusion, in their minds, was that it might be preparing for attack. The High Council debated fiercely. Some demanded immediate destruction of the unknown vessel. Others argued that provoking something they did not understand could be dangerous. A few rare voices suggested trying to communicate peacefully, but those voices were quickly drowned out. The Empire was not built on diplomacy, it was built on dominance. But even if they wanted to destroy the ship, they had a problem. The ship did not respond to targeting systems. Every time they tried to lock on, the scanners shifted, flickered, or simply turned off. It was as if the ship existed in a space the Empire's technology could not fully recognize. It could be seen with the eyes. It could be physically touched. But digital systems failed around it like dying candles in the wind. Hours passed. The Empire's frustration grew. They sent more ships to surround the unknown vessel, forming a blockade around it. Yet none dared fire without orders, and the orders never came. In truth, the Council was afraid. For the first time in centuries, they had encountered something that made them feel small. Inside the ship, the situation grew stranger. As Reth's team reached the heart of the vessel, they found a single chamber completely spherical, glowing with a gentle white light. No shadows existed inside the room. Their own reflections appeared faintly on the smooth walls, distorted like water. In the center floated a small, clear orb, rotating slowly and silently, as if suspended by invisible hands. Every soldier felt the same instinctive sense of caution the moment they stepped inside. They aimed their weapons at the orb, but Reth raised a hand and stopped them. He did not know why, but something inside him whispered that shooting would be a terrible mistake. The orb pulsed once, like a heartbeat, Then a soft hum filled the chamber. The soldiers froze. They expected an attack. Instead, the orb projected a single beam of light toward the floor, forming symbols, strange, flowing shapes none of them had ever seen. The shapes shifted again and again, attempting to form patterns familiar to the human eye. It was trying. It was learning. It was searching. And then, suddenly, the symbols changed into the Imperial language. 3 words appeared. Do not fear. Reth stared, stunned. The foreign ship understood their language, or at least it had learned it within minutes. The soldiers exchanged alarmed glances. If this technology could understand them so quickly, what else could it do? Before they could speak, the symbols changed again. Do not touch anything. Wait. That was all. The orb dimmed, and the room fell silent once more. Reth wanted answers. He wanted to understand what this ship wanted, but there was nothing more he could do. They were guests or prisoners inside a vessel that did not behave like any machine ever built. Outside, the Empire was growing desperate. They had attempted every known communication channel. They had scanned the ship with every type of sensor. They had even attempted to use psychic translators from conquered species known for mental abilities. None of it worked. The ship simply ignored them, as if the entire Empire was a background noise it did not care to acknowledge. Fearful of losing control, the Empire attempted a bold move. They sent a diplomat ship, carrying one of their best negotiators. The diplomat approached slowly, broadcasting peaceful messages. Surprisingly, the unknown vessel responded, but not in the way they hoped. A soft wave of energy spread outward, disabling the diplomat ship instantly. Just like the cruiser earlier, no one was harmed, but the message was clear. The unknown vessel did not want closer contact. Commander Reth watched from inside as the diplomat ship drifted powerless. His stomach tightened. If the unknown vessel wanted to destroy them, it easily could have. So why didn't it? Why was it stopping their systems but not harming anyone? A new fear crept into his mind. Maybe the ship did not fear the Empire at all. Maybe it simply did not consider them worth harming. Time passed slowly. The Empire sent more ships to surround the unknown vessel. It now stood at the center of a massive fleet, hundreds of Imperial warships, all pointed at it like spears surrounding a quiet animal. Yet the animal did not move. It did not panic. It did not defend itself. Instead, it floated calmly as if it belonged exactly where it was. Then something even more unexpected happened. The unknown vessel sent out a message, not through sound, not through screens. It simply appeared inside every Imperial ship, spoken directly into the minds of every officer. Observe, do not interfere. Many officers screamed in shock. Others froze. Some panicked and dropped their weapons. The Empire had never faced anything capable of speaking inside the mind of its entire fleet. Commander Reth felt the message too. The voice was gentle, calm, and strangely human. The arrival of that message changed everything. The Empire realized, for the first time, that this vessel was not simply drifting. It had a purpose, a mission, and the Empire was unintentionally standing in its way, while fear spread across the Imperial fleet like wildfire. Commander Reth looked around the glowing chamber and made a quiet decision. Whatever this was, the Empire needed to understand it before they acted. Because a force that could disable fleets, learn languages instantly, and speak directly into minds, was not something that could be defeated. It was something that could rewrite the fate of an entire civilization. Little did they know, this was only the beginning. The real storm had not yet arrived. Asterisk, the first ship had already shaken the Empire, but its true purpose became clear only 3 days later. Until then, most Imperial commanders still believed they could control the situation. They told themselves the silent vessel was only one ship. Strange. Yes, powerful perhaps, but still just a single object drifting through their territory. The Empire had crushed nations with fleets 10,000 times larger. How dangerous could one ship really be? But that thought began to crack when every attempt to move closer to the unknown vessel was stopped by invisible energy waves. Imperial ships approaching too near suddenly shut down, drifting helplessly like toys pushed aside. Even the Empire's strongest warships, the colossal Titan-class destroyers, could not get within a safe distance. Their engines sputtered, their shields collapsed, their systems behaved like they were forgetting how to function. Engineers screamed in frustration, tearing apart control panels, trying to understand what was happening. But the answer was always the same. Nothing was broken, yet nothing worked. Still, the Empire held its position around the unknown vessel, like wolves trying to circle a creature they did not understand. Some commanders demanded permission to fire missiles. Others begged to retreat. The High Council could not decide. Pride told them to stand firm. Fear whispered that they were facing something beyond their imagination. While the Empire argued, the silent vessel remained completely calm. It floated gently, almost peacefully, as if waiting for something. Commander Reth Solisar, trapped inside the mysterious ship with his team, could feel a quiet tension in the air. The orb at the center of the chamber pulsed softly, but it did nothing more. His crew sat against the curved walls, whispering theories about the ship's purpose. Some believed the vessel was a scout for a peaceful civilization. Others thought it might be a living weapon. One soldier claimed it wasn't a ship at all, but a probe from another dimension. Reth didn't know what to believe. All he knew was that the Empire's usual way of dealing with unknown threats force would not work here then. On the third day, something in the universe changed. It began with a ripple. Not light, not sound, something deeper. Every sensor on every Imperial ship went wild. Space itself seemed to stretch, like fabric being pulled in opposite directions. Pilots gripped their controls. Commanders shouted for status reports. Engineers stared at their screens in confusion. None of them could explain what they were seeing in the space around the unknown vessel. Small distortions appeared, circles of shimmering air, like swirling windows into somewhere else. They twisted and expanded, glowing faintly at their edges. Some officers thought they were black holes. Others thought they were hyperspace tears. But they were neither. They were something older, something fundamental, something the galaxy had never recorded before. The first rift opened fully with a quiet flash, then another, and another. Soon the darkness of space around the Empire's blockade was dotted with hundreds of perfect, circular openings, H1 like a doorway cut into the universe, and from the first doorway, a ship emerged. It looked similar to the silent vessel but larger, brighter and far more complex. Its hull shifted in color with every passing second, as if responding to invisible waves. Its shape was smooth, elegant, and distinctly human, though no human design known to the galaxy had ever looked like this. The ship moved with extraordinary grace, leaving no radiation, no fuel trail, not even a detectable energy signature. Then a second ship appeared, then a third. Within minutes, dozens poured through the rifts, each carving a silent path into normal space. The Imperial fleet watched in horror as hundreds of human-built vessels emerged from the glowing portals. No two ships looked exactly alike. Some were long like needles, others wide like floating cities, some shaped like wings, some like crescents, but all shared that same impossible, flawless technology. Officers across the Imperial fleet felt their confidence collapse. Every sensor they had started flickering wildly. Some screens went blank. Others displayed impossible readings, negative mass, infinite energy, numbers that looped endlessly as if broken. The Empire's machines simply could not understand what these human ships were for many soldiers. This was the first moment they felt true fear. Commander Reth watched from inside the glowing chamber, his heart pounding. The orb in the center of the room glowed brighter than ever before, as if welcoming its companions. Reth realized something important. The ship he was inside had not come alone. It had merely been the first, a messenger, a signal, from the newly arrived human fleet. No weapons activated, no defensive shields rose, no aggressive maneuvers were made. They simply moved past the Empire's warships, ignoring them entirely. The Imperial fleet tried to adjust formation, but their engines faltered. Some ships drifted, unable to maintain their positions. The humans did not fire. They did not threaten. They glided through the blockade as if the Empire didn't exist. Inside Imperial command centers, panic erupted. Officers screamed for orders. Admirals demanded strategies. But no strategy existed for an enemy that disabled machines without touching them. Some leaders wanted to retreat immediately. Others wanted to attack out of desperation. A few insisted on trying to communicate again, but before any decision could be made, something strange began happening across the Imperial fleet. One by one, their systems turned off, not all at once, not violently, but quietly, as if someone were gently switching off the lights in a massive ancient building. First weapons went dark, then shield generators flickered out, engines powered down, navigation screens dimmed and went blank. Life support systems continued functioning almost as if the unknown force deliberately ensured no one would die, but everything else went silent. Ships drifted in space like metal skeletons. Admirals shouted in confusion. Engineers cried, begging their systems to respond. Pilots slammed their fists against dead controls. Nothing helped. Every Imperial ship within the area had been neutralized by the presence of the human fleet. But still, the humans did not attack. They simply moved in formation. A silent river of silver and light, flowing through the helpless Imperial blockade. Some vessels scanned the Empire's ships. Others seemed to communicate with each other in patterns of shifting color. A few hovered near planetary outposts, releasing soft pulses of energy that shut down entire defense grids in seconds. To the Empire, this was no longer a military encounter. This was a complete technological collapse. Commander Reth felt a heavy weight in his chest as he saw the Empire's most powerful fleet rendered powerless. He wondered if this was the end, if the humans were about to conquer them, enslave them, or destroy them. But nothing happened. The human ships continued their silent movement, heading deeper into the Empire's territory. Their path was steady, direct, and unchanging. The orb inside the chamber pulsed again, and new symbols formed. Observation complete. Reth stared at the message, barely breathing. Then it changed. Phase 2 begins. The orb dimmed, the chamber lights flickered, and Reth realized something chilling. The silent ship had never been endangered. It had never been threatened. It had never been trapped. It had been waiting. And now, with hundreds of human vessels swarming through Imperial space, the true purpose of their arrival began to unfold. A purpose the Empire had no power to stop. a purpose that made their thousands of warships, their centuries of dominance, and their pride look meaningless. The human fleet had arrived not to attack, but to do something far more terrifying, to erase the Empire's power, piece by piece, with technology the galaxy had never seen. And this was only the beginning of their impossible mission. The collapse of the Empire did not happen with explosions, battles, or dramatic last stands. It happened slowly, quietly, and in a way that nobody in the Calthorian Empire could understand. People expected war. They expected fire, destruction, the armies of the Empire rising proudly to defend their worlds. Instead, everything began to fall apart without a single shot being fired. When the human fleet passed through the Empire's territory, they did not attack the Imperial warships. They simply moved in calm formation, ignoring the Empire's threats and commands. Wherever the human ships traveled, the same strange phenomenon followed. Machines stopped working, power grids shut down, and communication lines fell silent. The Empire had thousands of star systems, millions of soldiers, and weapons capable of destroying moons. But none of it mattered in the face of this invisible force. At first, the Empire thought it was temporary. Engineers worked day and night. Commanders shouted until their voices went hoarse. Technicians crawled inside machines, tore apart panels, and replaced entire systems. But nothing helped. The moment they fixed a piece of equipment, it broke again the next second. Power sources behaved as though they had forgotten how to produce energy. Computers stared blankly with flickering screens. Starships that had flown for centuries suddenly drifted like broken toys. In the Imperial capital, chaos spread like fire. The capital world, Calthor Prime, was famous for its massive towers, glowing skyways, and endless streams of flying vehicles. It was the heart of the Empire, a place that had never known failure or weakness. But when the human fleet moved deeper into Imperial space, reaching system after system, the capital felt the effects almost instantly. Holographic screens across the city flickered, showing distorted images of the Emperor. The giant energy shield that protected the planet pulsed once, then shut down completely. People panicked. Never in history had the capital's shield failed. It was considered indestructible, powered by the Empire's greatest technology. When it went dark, it felt like the heart of the Empire had stopped beating. Inside the Imperial Palace, the Emperor demanded answers. Advisors rushed into meetings, carrying datapads that refused to turn on. Scientists tried to explain the energy disruptions but ended up arguing with each other. The royal guard stood nervously at the entrances, gripping weapons that had become useless. The Empire had always believed in its own strength, but that belief was crumbling faster than anyone could control. Across the Empire, planets struggled in similar ways. Entire cities lost power. Transportation grids collapsed. Medical facilities, which relied on advanced machines, were forced back to primitive methods. For the first time in centuries, people had to rely on candlelight, manual tools, and handwritten notes. It felt like they had been thrown into the past overnight. Some people blamed the government. Others blamed a secret enemy. Some whispered that the Empire had angered the gods. But those who had seen the human fleet knew the truth. This collapse was not natural, and it was not random. It was the silent work of a force far more advanced than anything the Empire had ever encountered. Commander Reth Solisa, still inside the strange human ship, understood the situation better than most. He watched the human fleet traveling deeper into the Empire's territory, each ship moving with purpose and precision. None of them showed signs of aggression. None of them tried to make contact. They simply neutralized everything that relied on technology. It was as if the human fleet was not interested in fighting. They were interested in removing the Empire's power. Layer by layer, Reth felt a mix of fear and helplessness. The Empire had always believed that technology was the ultimate weapon. They built fleets that could burn planets, machines that could reshape landscapes, and systems that controlled millions of lives. But now, that very dependence on technology had become their weakness. That humans did not need to destroy anything. They only needed to disable the Empire's machines. Once the machines stopped working, the Empire itself started to fall apart. In the outer colonies, the collapse was even worse. These worlds depended heavily on supply ships from the Central Empire. Without communication, without transport, without working systems, people were left stranded. Food shortages began. Water purification centers shut down. Entire colonies sat in darkness under strange, silent skies. The Empire tried to send emergency aid, but the ships couldn't fly. Military outposts tried to help, but their vehicles wouldn't move. The entire Imperial network had turned into a maze of broken systems and powerless machines. The strangest part was that the human ships never harmed a single person. They never fired a weapon. They never issued threats. They simply kept moving, and everything around them collapsed. It was the quietest war the galaxy had ever seen, and the most devastating. Some Imperial commanders attempted to fight back anyway. They launched missiles even knowing the systems barely worked. Some ships attempted to ram the human vessels, hoping brute force would succeed where technology failed. But every attempt ended the same way. Before impact, the attacking ship would lose power, drift off course, and float away harmlessly. It was as if the humans existed in a different layer of reality, untouchable and unbothered. On one planet, a desperate general ordered all ground weapons to fire at a human ship passing overhead. Thousands of energy bolts shot into the sky, filling the air with glowing trails. None of them reached the target. Every weapon shut down mid-shot, leaving soldiers staring at their useless rifles in disbelief. The general dropped to his knees, realizing the truth others were beginning to understand. They were not facing an enemy, they were facing inevitability. Meanwhile, the human fleet continued its silent march. They entered star systems one by one, disabling factories, shutting down outposts, and breaking the Empire's communication network. Without communication, the Imperial leadership lost control. Without control, local governors panicked. Without working machines, entire cities felt like ghosts, quiet and powerless. It did not take long before the Empire lost its ability to defend itself. And once that happened, the collapse sped up even more. Pirate groups that had been hiding in remote regions took advantage of the chaos. Rebel factions tried to rise up, believing this was their chance for freedom. Civil disputes turned violent in some regions. The Empire had always been the only thing holding these forces back. With the Empire stumbling, everything that had been suppressed now came rushing out. The Emperor tried to rally his people, giving speeches about strength and unity, but his words reached only a fraction of the population. The rest saw only darkness, silence, and fear. They saw the Empire's greatest symbols of power failing. They saw their leaders panicking. They saw the human fleet, bright and unstoppable, moving closer to the capital each day. Inside the human ship, Commander Reth watched helplessly. He tried to understand the humans' purpose. Why not negotiate? Why not talk? Why not explain their actions? But the humans remained silent. They seemed to consider the Empire's collapse as something natural, something necessary, something planned, and that terrified him more than anything. When the human fleet finally reached the core worlds, the very heart of the Empire had already lost most of its systems. Only small pockets of power still worked, flickering weakly like dying flames. Imperial fleets were dead in space. Defense grids were cold. Entire cities were silent. The Empire stood on its knees, unable to fight, unable to flee, unable to understand. Then the final collapse began. On the capital world, the great sky bridges dimmed. Giant towers stopped glowing. The city sank into darkness as the last power reserves died. People looked up at the sky and saw the human fleet hovering silently above them, their ships glowing like strange stars. There were no explosions, no lasers, no destruction, just silence. A silence so deep that it felt like the universe itself had stopped breathing. The Empire had not been conquered, it had been quietly erased, like a drawing wiped from a board. And yet, the humans still had not spoken a single word. Their purpose remained a mystery. But to the Empire, one truth became painfully clear. Their rule had ended not with war, but with a whisper. When the Empire finally collapsed, the galaxy did not explode into celebration or panic. It simply went quiet. The fall of such a massive power should have shaken every star system. But the way it happened left people confused rather than shocked. There were no epic battles, no heroic last stands, no skies filled with fire. The Empire simply stopped working, like a giant machine that had run perfectly for centuries and then shut down without warning. And hovering silently above its broken worlds, the human fleet remained calm and mysterious. Across the Empire's ruins, people stepped out of their powerless homes and silent buildings, staring at the strange ships floating in the sky. These vessels glowed softly, brighter than the sun yet gentle on the eyes. They looked beautiful and terrifying at the same time. People whispered prayers, curses, questions, anything to make sense of the presence of these silent watchers. Some believed they were gods, others believed they were angels of death, and some feared they were here to claim the Empire's territory. But none of those theories were correct. The strangest part was that after the Empire fell, the human fleet did nothing. They did not land soldiers on planets. They did not take control of cities. They did not even speak. They simply stayed in the sky, unmoving, like guardians or silent judges waiting for a moment only they understood. Meanwhile, the imperial government was collapsing from the inside. Without power, without communication, without order, most officials fled their posts. The emperor remained in the capital palace for as long as he could, surrounded by guards holding useless weapons. He waited for the humans to attack or demand surrender. But the demand never came. Instead, one morning, the emperor woke to find the sky filled with human ships, glowing like stars, but none of them moved closer. None of them fired. They simply hovered there, giving no instructions, offering no explanations. It became clear to him, and to everyone else, that the humans had not come to conquer. They had come to remove something. The question was, what? Commander Reth Solasar, still inside the human vessel that took him days earlier, asked himself the same question every hour. He and his team sat inside the glowing chamber, watching symbols appear and disappear across the walls. The orb at the center pulsed gently, as if alive, but it had stopped communicating since the last message. Phase 2 begins. Reth had no idea what Phase 2 was. He feared it meant further destruction. perhaps even the elimination of the Empire's population. Yet no harm came to anyone. Days passed. The Empire adjusted to its new reality of silence and chaos. People learned to live without machines. Farmers returned to old tools. Medics used simple methods handed down over generations. Pilots and soldiers faced the terrible truth: they were powerless. But in this strange new world, something unexpected happened. Local communities began to help one another. Governors reached out to their people directly instead of through technology. Old rivalries softened as everyone faced the same mystery. Who were the humans? And what did they want? Then, after weeks of silence, the first sign of change came. The orb inside the ship pulsed brighter than ever before. The walls of the chamber glowed with symbols in hundreds of languages, some known, some unknown. Commander Reth rushed forward with his soldiers. They watched as the symbols rearranged themselves again and again, forming patterns that seemed to tell a story. Finally, the orb projected a single message in the Imperial language. "You have seen the limits of your path." Reth's heart pounded. It was the first message since the collapse. He waited for more, and soon the next line appeared. "Your empire grew too quickly. You built power without balance." Then another line: "You forgot what it means to survive without control." Reth felt the truth of those words like a blade. The Empire had relied on strength, fear, and technology for centuries. It had forgotten humility, compassion, and cooperation. It believed itself to be invincible, untouchable, perfect. And now, it had paid the price. The next message appeared slowly, as if the ship wanted Reth to read it carefully. "We have removed the tools that blinded you." Reth realized something important. The humans had not destroyed the Empire, they had disabled it. They had taken away the Empire's technology because it had become a weapon of oppression. The Empire had used machines to control, to conquer, to dominate. The humans, whoever they were, had simply ended that cycle. "What now?" Reth whispered aloud. As if answering his question, the orb projected one final message. "Now you choose what you want to become." And then the orb dimmed. For the first time since entering the ship, Reth understood the purpose of this entire event. The humans were not invaders. They were not conquerors. They were not destroyers. They were something far older, far wiser, and far beyond the Empire's understanding. They had come not to rule, but to correct the path of a civilization that had lost its balance. They had wiped away the Empire's power so its people could start again not as conquerors, but as survivors. The human fleet outside began to move. Slowly, quietly. They turned away from the Empire's worlds and drifted toward the glowing rifts that still hung in the sky like giant mirrors. One by one, the human ships entered the portals and disappeared without leaving a trace. No sound, no light, no energy signature, just silence. In a matter of hours, the entire human fleet was gone. But the first vessel, the one that started everything, remained. It floated peacefully above the capital world, glowing softly, like a reminder of everything the Empire had lost and everything it could still become. Scientists studied it. Philosophers debated its meaning. Citizens left offerings on the ground beneath it, unsure whether it was a blessing or a warning. Reth was finally released from the ship. When he stepped back into the world, he saw a planet changed forever. The Imperial Palace had lost its glory. The once bright towers of the capital stood dark. People walked the streets with fear, hope, confusion, and awe. They asked him what he saw, what he learned, what the humans wanted. Reth tried to explain, but his words felt too small. How could he describe a force so quiet yet so powerful? In the following weeks, the Empire dissolved. Governments scattered. Local leaders took charge. The oppressive structures that had ruled the galaxy for centuries simply vanished. Without technology, without fleets, without power, the Empire couldn't rebuild itself. But something surprising happened. People began to rebuild their lives not as servants of the Empire, but as individuals with their own choices. Former soldiers became protectors of small towns. Citizens learned old skills forgotten during the age of machines. Trade networks formed without imperial rules. Small communities grew stronger than they had been in years. The Empire had vanished, but life continued. For many, the grief of losing everything was overwhelming. For others, the arrival of the humans was a blessing disguised as disaster, second chance for a broken civilization. Still, the biggest question remained: who were the humans? No answer came. The mysterious fleet never returned. No message arrived. The remaining vessel above the capital stayed silent and inactive, like a monument, a memory, a warning, or perhaps a promise. Years later, stories began to spread across the galaxy. Some claimed that the humans were travelers from a future so distant that their technology appeared like magic. Others believed they were wanderers from another dimension, sent to correct civilizations before they destroyed themselves. A few whispered ancient myths about protectors who watched the rise and fall of empires. In every version, one idea remained: the humans were not conquering, they were correcting. And still, nobody knew where they came from, but the galaxy changed forever because of them. The empire that had once dominated hundreds of worlds now existed only in history books and fading memories. In its place stood a collection of independent planets, each rebuilding in their own way. Instead of fear and force, cooperation began to grow. Peace was fragile, but it was real. Commander Reth became a quiet figure in this new age, a man who had witnessed the fall of an empire and survived inside the heart of the mystery. He spent the rest of his life teaching others what he learned inside that glowing chamber. He told them the empire fell not because it was weak, but because it had forgotten its purpose. It tried to rule everything, and in doing so, lost everything. And sometimes, at night, he would look up at the silent human ships still floating in the sky and wonder if one day the humans would return, not to destroy, not to save, but simply to watch and see what the galaxy had become. For now, the humans remained a mystery, like a shadow at the edge of history, powerful and silent, and no one knew where they had come from, or if they would ever come again.